welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I'm so glad you guys are here hanging out with me today. So guys, yes, as the title of the video suggests, I've been keeping a big secret from you guys, and that is that I am pregnant. Yes guys, I am pregnant. In fact, I am almost halfway through the pregnancy, so I've been keeping this secret from you guys for quite a while. So in today's video, I just wanted to talk to you guys about how my pregnancy experience has been here in the Netherlands versus the United States, and also just how I'm feeling in general. So you guys know the drill. Go ahead and get comfortable, get yourself your favorite drink, and we'll get right into it. So I guess I'll start off by talking to you guys about how I've been feeling. First off, the reason it's taken me a while to even make this video is I wanted to make sure that I respectfully shared the information first with my family and friends. And now that I have that out of the way, I wanted to share it with you guys. But if you all have been paying close attention to my recent videos, then you may have noticed that my face has been getting puffier, and I do definitely have a big old belly down here. So my whole pregnancy journey here in the Netherlands so far has been really exciting and definitely different from what it was with Cameron when we were in the US. So guys, I have been extremely sick. So just a little bit of a backstory. When I was pregnant with Cameron, I was diagnosed with something called hyperemesis. And if you're not familiar with what that is, you can look it up. But in a nutshell, it essentially is just severe morning sickness. So unlike other pregnant women who may experience morning sickness for just a certain period of time during the day, I experience morning sickness throughout the entire day. So basically from the minute I open my eyes in the morning to the minute I close them at night. In addition to that, unlike other women who only mostly have it during their first trimester, so at 12 weeks it starts to taper down, my morning sickness basically with Cameron lasted until the day I gave birth to him. When I found out I was pregnant this time around, I was hoping that things would be different, and in fact I actually thought things were different up until I was 8 weeks pregnant, and everything basically just took a turn for the worse. I was so sick. I mean, everything made me sick. The smell of everything made me sick. I mean, even the smell of air. I know that sounds so dramatic, but even the smell of just air made me sick, and putting anything in my mouth just made me so sick. So it got to a point where I was trying to be really strong and just power through it and not take any medication. But it became so bad that we had to get in touch with my midwife, and I was so weak, I could not leave the house. She had to come to the house to see me. And at that point in time, she was really concerned because I was severely dehydrated because it was all coming out and I couldn't keep anything in. So she actually had to reach out to a gynecologist, I believe. I know it was someone at the hospital because I was almost admitted into hospital. But at that point in time, the doctor advised that I be prescribed medication for the nausea. So I started taking the medication on the same day, and then I was supposed to have a follow-up 2 days after, which was a Monday. And if things hadn't gotten better, then I would have to be admitted into hospital. So that's just a nutshell of how severe the morning sickness has been. However, I'm glad that I do have the medication. I can't say that it entirely makes the nausea go away because I still have pretty severe nausea, but it just makes the days more bearable. But yes, that has definitely been a tough adjustment. I've tried everything that I've read online. I've tried the ginger, and that doesn't do anything for me. I've tried eating crackers as soon as I wake up in the morning. I've tried basically everything that has been written online, and nothing has worked. But like I said, the medication does give me a little bit of relief, so I'm glad that I have that. So I have to be honest guys, making these videos, in fact, I vividly recall that starting with a video where Cam and I sat down and did a trivia, up until today, it has been really hard making the videos because I'm always having to run off because I get so nauseous. However, not making these videos is definitely not an option because I really enjoy chatting with you guys and getting to interact in the comment section. So now that you guys know what that experience has been like, I want to talk to you guys about some of the differences that I've experienced being pregnant here in the Netherlands versus in the US. And the first big one is the fact that I see a midwife and not a gynecologist. So when I first got pregnant, it was interesting because I wasn't sure who to even get a hold of. Because if you are familiar with how the healthcare system works in the US, then just about everyone has their PCP, who's your primary caregiver, who's the equivalent of your house search, so your GP here in the Netherlands. And then for women, you also have your gynecologist, who is completely separate from your PCP. So when I was pregnant before, I knew that automatically I would call my gynecologist. But here in the Netherlands, because I only have a general practitioner, I wasn't sure if that's who I was supposed to call when I was pregnant. So when we did find out I was pregnant, we called the GP. So when I called the GP, they told me that I would need to get in touch with a midwife. And I was thinking, midwife? Because like I said, that's something I'd never experienced before. And so when they said I needed to get in touch with a midwife, it kind of threw me off because I'd never experienced, or at least know anyone around me that had experienced a midwife before. As far as I was aware, I always thought that a midwife was someone that supported the gynecologist and wasn't able to do the job as far as like the pregnancy and up until the delivery of a pregnant woman on her own. So that was definitely new to me. And I always thought that just the way it's always portrayed in the US, you know, a midwife was more for people who were like yogis or rich people that just had disposable income that thought it was cool to have a midwife. But clearly I was absolutely wrong. So I then reached out to the midwife that was recommended by the GP, and we set up an initial meeting. And so when I went in, it was really awesome because it put a lot of clarity in my mind. So the practice that I go to consists of 5 midwives, and every time I go for an appointment, I always get to see a different one. And the reason for that is because when it does come time for me to give birth, then obviously it's going to be whichever one is on call who is going to be with me. So I have to tell you guys firsthand, I have actually loved the experience of seeing a midwife. I mean, it feels like it's so much more of a personal experience with them as opposed to the doctor where it's so much more formal. Here, I feel like I can openly speak up about how I'm feeling. I feel like they listen to me more. I feel like they ask me more questions. Like it's just so much more of a personal experience. In fact, like I mentioned before, when I was sick and I had my first experience with them and they came to the house to see me, there was so much care and concern, and they wanted to make sure, like you could tell they were genuinely wanting to make sure that I was okay and cared about my well-being. So that to me just made me feel so good. And at that point in time, any fears that I may have had, and my fear wasn't so much that I thought the midwives weren't going to be good. I think it was more so just because it was different. It wasn't anything I'd experienced before. Like I said, in the US, you're more used to dealing with a gynecologist as opposed to a midwife. But I would like to let anyone know who's not from the Netherlands, who may be moving here and may potentially get pregnant, that the midwives are absolutely amazing. Now, obviously, guys, I'll probably have more to speak on the experience with the midwives as my pregnancy progresses and as I get ready to give birth. But as of right now, my experience with them has been really, really amazing. Now, the next thing is the fact that giving birth at home is actually quite common here in the Netherlands. Now, guys, this one absolutely shocked me, and I have to be honest, I did not know that it was actually a thing here. But a lot of the women in the Netherlands actually have their babies at home. Now, initially, when I heard about this, when I was looking at all the paperwork that the midwives gave me, I was thinking to myself, absolutely not. I mean, there was absolutely no chance that I would even consider that. But now that I have formed this personal relationship with the midwives, now that I'm kind of like understanding how things work, I'm actually becoming more and more open to it, and the thought of it is not as foreign as it may have been before. Now, it's always interesting when I talk to my family or friends and tell them about that, because that's the one thing that they're always like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And so I've definitely warmed up to the idea of having the baby at home. Now, I'm not entirely sure what direction I'm gonna go with that one specifically. I'm still on the fence. I'm still trying to weigh my options. As you guys know, we obviously have Cameron, so I don't want to, I don't know, for lack of better words, traumatize him with experience. And also I know that sometimes you run into emergencies, so it's better off being at the hospital. But I don't know, guys, that's the one that I'm still on the fence about. I know there's definitely pros to having the baby at home, but I still have to think about it. That one I have not made a decision on. Thankfully, I still have the entire second half of my pregnancy to decide whether that's something that I will be doing. But rest assured, I'll definitely keep you guys posted and you'll know what decision I end up making. I mean, guys, I'm pretty sure that a very small small percentage of women in the US, and that's either if it was an accident, so as in the baby came really quick and you didn't have time to go to the hospital, or an even smaller percentage that do choose to have their babies at home. With the exception of that, everyone else has their baby in the hospital. I mean, when I was pregnant with Cameron, having him at home was definitely not an option. I mean, it wasn't discussed. It's not a thing. So it's not to say that all women in the Netherlands do have their babies at home, or you have to have your baby at home, but a lot of them do choose to have their babies at home, and it's highly supported. Something else that I thought was super interesting too is the midwife told me that after I have the baby, then I'm only going to be in hospital for 3 hours, which is crazy to me because in the US, after you have your baby, you have to be in hospital for 3 days, and that's if it's a normal delivery. If you have any complications or a C-section, then those days increase. So it's definitely crazy, guys. That's still something that I'm trying to wrap my brain around. Like I said, the idea of having a home birth is something that's slowly starting to become normal in my mind. The next thing is the cost of giving birth and being pregnant here in the Netherlands versus in the US. So again, I really don't know about the giving birth part of things. So up until this point, which is halfway through, my insurance has covered all the costs of my pregnancy, with the exception of 2 things that I've had to pay for, and both of them were voluntary tests that I took. So the first one was a NIP test, and it's a test that measures whether your baby may or may not have any chromosomal issues. So that test was 175 euros, and that we had to pay out of pocket. The other test that we have paid for out of pocket so far, they call it the fun test, which is the gender test, and that one we also had to pay out of pocket, and that was 35 euros. So far, those are the only 2 things that we've had to pay out of pocket. I don't think there's any other tests. I know I have other tests that are coming up, but if there's any other that I have to pay for, I'll definitely let you guys know in a later video. Now with Cameron in the US, I didn't individually have to pay for any one of those 2 tests. Luckily, I had pretty good insurance in the US that covered a good portion of my pregnancy. However, I do recall that out of pocket, we had to pay a portion for the gynecologist, and I believe that was in the range of about $1,500, give or take. But it wasn't anything as far as like for the test, it was just a lump sum amount, and what it went to specifically, I'm not sure, but I know that was something that we had to pay for the gynecologist. And I believe as I was reading through my insurance, the entire pregnancy, with the exception of a few tests that you opt to take by yourself, they're not mandatory, is covered by your insurance. So that already in itself is a huge difference. And then to add on that, something else that has been really interesting and shocking, if you will, like I mentioned earlier, I am taking medication for my nausea, and so far I haven't had to pay anything for the medication, which is really weird. The first time I went to the pharmacy to pick it up, she handed it over to me, and I kind of just awkwardly stood there because I was waiting for the price to pop up in the little machine and for her to tell me. She kind of just waved goodbye. So that was like really strange, and I thought maybe I would get a bill sent to us in the mail, but so far nothing has come. I've obviously had to refill the medication a few times, and I haven't had to pay for any of it. So that has been very different, because any medication that you basically get in the US, you're paying for, and you're paying heftily for it. So I have not had to pay for any of my nausea medication so far, so that's been very interesting. Again, if I do have to pay for that down the road, if they send me like a big invoice, I'm not sure how that works, I will let you guys know. Another thing that has been really amazing is the fact that when I have been really sick, like in the beginning of my pregnancy, the midwife actually came to the house to see me, which I've mentioned this in one of my previous videos before, which I think it's just crazy in general, the fact that your house cert, your GP, can come and see you at the house when you're not feeling well. I mean, it's just incredible the fact that that option is there. I mean, that's definitely not a thing as far as your PCP or your gynecologist coming to your home to see you. So the fact that that's something that I was able to utilize because I was super sick was really, really awesome. In addition to that, anytime I've gone to see the midwife in the practice, it's not like a crazy hustle and bustle where you have to present your insurance card, where you have to present my ID. Here, anytime I go, it's just letting them know that I'm here for my appointment, and then she lets me know the midwife will see me shortly. However, anytime I went for my appointment to the gynecologist before with Cameron, I always had to present my ID. I always had to present my driver's license. It was always redundant. The only time I ever presented my ID here for the midwife was the first time I ever went, and ever since then, they've never asked me for any documentation education. They've never asked me for any payment. It's just all very different for me because I'm used to always having to, you know, whether it's pay your copay or present all these different forms of identification. And then finally is how active I've been pregnant here in the Netherlands versus the US. I mean, the fact that I ride my bike to get to so many places, I'm still doing that while pregnant. And that is something, riding a bike while pregnant in the US is something I never did or would have never thought of doing, but I'm still doing it at this point. And it's actually really, really awesome to just get out and get that fresh air. And so that's something that I've been doing here. In addition to that, the fact that you're able to walk to so many of the places, I'm still able to walk and get that exercise in. So it's been really awesome being active during my pregnancy, because in the US, it's not like I'd ride a bike to get to somewhere. So the fact that I do ride my bike here to get to certain places is really amazing. And it's actually been helping me a lot, you know, to just feel better in general. So there you have it, guys. It's been a very exciting time, not only for myself, but for Randy and especially Cameron. I think he's the most excited out of all of us. He is over the moon. He cannot wait to meet his little sibling. He's very eager for them to get here. It's also been a little bit difficult being pregnant away from family, but luckily we get to see them very, very soon. More on that on a different video. We're going to be having a little schapenkoop, which if you're not familiar with what that is, any baby who's born in Dordrecht is referred to as a sheephead. I'm really not sure about why that is, but everyone keeps telling me that I'm having a schapenkoop, which is really, really sweet. I will definitely take you guys along this journey with me because it's such a huge experience, especially doing in a totally different country. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and until next time, doei!